Hello, this is Joy News Prime with me, Ernest Manu. Coming up in the next 2 hours, construction of the National Cathedral suspended as the Secretariat runs out of the much-needed cash to finance the project.
Like I said, we have finished the foundational work, all of them. We've suspended it a bit to ensure that we have adequate resources. But the worst part is to have people on site and pay them whilst work is not going.
If Ghanaians supported e-levy, would have found money to fix the roads. The roads minister opens up about financial difficulties of his ministry at Parliament's Government Assurance Committee.
One of the key areas for the e-levy was the road sector. So if it had been, for instance, supported we could have, it could have helped.
As over 23,000 people test positive for HIV in the first half of 2022, researcher at the University of Ghana develops a formula that will be a major contributor to the development of new anti-HIV drugs.
The proteins look a certain way, and what we can do now is to develop drugs that can specifically stop this processing from happening. Yeah. And we can stop that. The virus is completely dead.
We'll hear from him as he urges government and the AIDS Commission to leverage research in the fight against the epidemic. And later, causing financial loss to the state. Health Minister Kojo Manu confronted with evidence. Bank of Ghana sought authorization from his ministry to pay ambulance. This comes hours after he insisted he was not aware of the existence of any such document. Hello again, thanks for choosing us. Now, the construction of the National Cathedral hangs in the balance as the Secretariat runs out of capital to finance the project. Executive Director of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, says workers have been suspended and the ability to complete the project depends keenly on Ghanaian support. He made this revelation when the Redeemed Christian Church of God donated to the Secretariat on Tuesday. Mercy Idioma's report read to you.
President Akufo-Addo promised to put up the National Cathedral to thank God if he won the 2016 presidential election.
The purpose of the cathedral, as I indicated at the sword cutting, was to offer thanksgiving to the Almighty for his blessings to us as a nation and to address a missing link in the nation's architecture by building a church for national purposes.
He did and then began mobilizing resources and support for the project.
Looking through the history of all the great cathedrals of the world, there's never been what can be called an appropriate time to build a cathedral.
Construction started in earnest, with residential facilities at Ridge being pulled down to make way for the project. But on Tuesday, the Cathedral Secretariat reviewed donations have slowed, forcing them to suspend work at the site. Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah is Executive Director at the Secretariat and has been speaking during the donation of 11,500 cedis by the Lagos-based Redeemed Christian Church of God.
Moment, like I said, we have finished the foundational work, all of them. We've suspended it a bit to ensure that we have adequate resources. But the worst part is to have people on site and pay them whilst work is not going on. So what we did was just to say, but we have the contractors and their staff on site, but the workers we've suspended. We are hoping that within the next couple of weeks, as part of our fundraising and other initiatives, we can begin work again. But essentially, our ability to complete this work really is dependent on Ghanaians supporting us. And really, we are saying that, look, the money might be big in terms of volume, but if indeed we are 21 million Christians, and really 1 million can give us 100 cedis a month for a year, we can easily complete this in time. Have faith in the Ghanaian, and I'm confident that we will do this. Very confident.
Construction is currently at the foundation level and remains unclear will be made available for work to resume. Mercy Idioma's report for Joy News.
The minority on the Government Assurance Committee of Parliament is pushing back on claims that government is struggling to fix roads due to the lack of support for the e-levy. Roads and Highways Minister Kwesi Amoakwata appeared before the committee to provide an update on promises he made to MPs regarding some road construction projects nationwide. The minister explained more roads will be fixed if Ghanaians supported the e-levy, which is currently doing less than 7% of government's target. Parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante has more in the following report.
Government has touted the last few years as the years of roads and touted what they called a significant achievement in the sector. But government now admits there is still a lot of work to be done given the number of roads that are still in a terrible state. Roads and Highways Minister Kwesi Amoakwata says if Ghanaians supported the e-levy, more roads can be fixed.
Pay taxes and contribute to infrastructure, so that if we pay taxes like the e-levy which was introduced, if it's supported, one of the key areas for the e-levy was the road sector. So if it had been, for instance, supported and we could have, it could have helped. You understand?
The government has currently received less than 7% of the originally projected 6.9 billion cedis it intended to raise from the e-levy. Government has raised less than 100 million. The minister also admits the challenge is due to unreleased budgetary allocations.
Your statement is true. I want to confirm your statement that we all know that we do not get all the releases as per the appropriation that we passed, and because we know the challenges, and it's not limited to any particular government, it's not limited to any particular ministry.
But the NDC MPs on the Government Assurance Committee have been hitting back at the responses from the minister.
I don't think the minister even in the first place had to say that. Because he cancelled the road tolls. And so if he knew we needed money to do all this, why did he even in the first place cancel the road tolls? I remember in December when I encountered him regarding my roads, he told me, that honorable member, that is why we are asking you to approve the e-levy for us. As we speak now, is the e-levy not approved? And so he didn't even have to talk about it.
I wasn't too much impressed. All borders on the fact that it is about funding. But our issue is not about funding, it's about promises made by he himself on the floor of the House, and whether those promises have been fulfilled or not, as in accordance with our standing orders. Now, if he has made a promise, it means that he knows that there's funding for it or there's no funding for it. For him to come back and ask for another assurance within assurance, what is the guarantee that funds will be made available? So I'm not impressed at all. We are not here to play. We are not here to also witch hunt. We are not here to lay the blame on any of the administrating, but the e-levy has been passed. I mean, if he's talking about e-levy, it's been passed. So why is it not getting the funding for it? It means that government has not done its homework well. If government has done its homework well, they will not put all their eggs in one basket, which is called the e-levy.
Thank you.
He comes try to give promises, but these promises are never adhered to. But let's hope that this time around the right thing will be done, because he's meeting a committee.
They have specific concerns with the responses of the minister. They say they are going to push to ensure that all these promises he made on the floor of the House, as well as the promises he made here at the Government Assurance Committee, will be met. They are also not satisfied with the minister blaming the underperformance of the e-levy. They say, well, they told the government that e-levy wasn't going to perform so well.
The Minister for Fisheries, Hawa Kumsin, and Local Government Minister Dan Botwe are expected to appear before the committee on Wednesday after failing to do so last week. For Joy News, Kweku Asante, Accra.
Now, the Health Minister, Kojo Manu, was on Tuesday confronted with documents showing that the Bank of Ghana sought authorization from his ministry to pay an ambulance supplier. Now, Mr. Manu had in his testimony insisted he was not aware of the existence of any such document indicating a request or approval by the Health Ministry during the John Mahama administration. All of this played out when the Health Minister was cross-examined by lawyers for former Deputy Finance Minister Dr. Kezela Tuforsen. Court correspondent Joseph Kable has the rest of the story.
Dr. Forson and two others are accused of causing a 2.3 million euros financial loss to the state in the procurement of ambulances. The health minister had earlier told the court a letter written by Dr. Forson asking the Bank of Ghana to issue letters of credit for the supplier is what resulted in payments contrary to the agreement. He insisted that the contract barred payment before delivery. The development he had explained created a situation where defective vehicles were supplied even though monies had been paid. Dr. Forson's legal team, led by Dr. Abdul Basit Bamba, on Tuesday cross-examined the minister. They asked whether he was aware of the fact that the Bank of Ghana had requested authorization from the Health Ministry before such payments were made. Mr. Ajimamenu said he was unaware and had not cited any such documents since taking office in 2017. Hours later, he was confronted with a document showing a request from the Bank of Ghana to the Health Ministry for authorization. The minister admitted the letter showed a request but insisted Dr. Forson's earlier letter is what resulted in the establishment of the letters of credit. The minister is the fourth of the Attorney General's 5 witnesses and will be back in court on Thursday, September 1. The former Deputy Finance Minister's legal team is expected to complete the cross-examination to enable other defense lawyers undertake cross-examination as well.
Away from the courts, private university colleges operating in the country now have 4 years to meet the requirements set by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to attain autonomous status. The colleges are to put in place a governance structure, quality teaching and learning, research department, sustainable financial and teaching materials, among other factors. President Akufo-Addo said the country is determined not to compromise on the integrity and quality of education at the tertiary level. He was speaking at a program at the Jubilee House to present a presidential charter to the Methodist, Presbyterian and Catholic universities.
Following the creation of the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission under the Education Regulatory Bodies Act 2020, Act 1023, it is no longer mandatory for new tertiary education institutions to go into affiliation arrangements with existing chartered institutions to be accredited. This means that the standard of proof would be much higher for new institutions coming on board, as they will have to demonstrate capacity to hit the ground running. I will thus urge the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to be even more vigilant in applying the new rules in order not to compromise the internationally acknowledged reputation of integrity and quality of Ghana's higher education system.
Still on education, the Methodist University was established in 2000, whilst the Catholic and Pentecost universities came on stream in 2003. The faith-based schools of higher learning met all the criteria needed for the presidential charter, which now enables them to award their own degrees and diplomas. President Akufo-Addo urged them to ensure they contribute significantly to the training of manpower for the country.
As part of the new transitional arrangements for the granting of a charter, all existing university colleges have been given up to 4 years to demonstrate their capability and readiness for a charter by meeting the prescribed conditions. However, if an affiliated institution is unable to meet the requirements for a charter within the specified 4-year period, but demonstrates sufficient cause for preparing for a charter, additional 2 years may be given by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to the institution to enable that institution meet the requirements for charter. They have, as a result, successfully gone through the rigorous accreditation and quality assurance processes under Section 5, Subsection 2 of Act 1023. Based on satisfactory recommendations by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, I'm pleased to announce that Methodist University College, Presbyterian University College, and Catholic University College have each fulfilled these requirements and are all considered to be in a good position to manage their own affairs as fully fledged tertiary education institutions.
In today's Living Standard series, fish sellers and coastal operators fear the price of your meat and fish will continue to soar unless the cedi is stabilized. At the Kaneshi Fish Market and the Franco-Pat Cold Store, traders say their businesses are struggling to survive. That's for your Living Standard series. Now, assuming you've been experiencing a state of complete body immobility, yet you're widely awake and it's making you extremely anxious but also depressed, well, doctors say there's no cause for alarm. You're merely having what we call sleep paralysis. Well, to calm your nerves and anxiety about this phenomenon, Joy News' Jesse Sewa Boafo speaks to a doctor in the following report.
Sleep paralysis is a transient inability to move or speak while falling asleep or upon waking up. According to medical experts, it is purely a natural episode in the rapid eye movement stage of sleep. Stress, inadequate and inconsistent sleep patterns, and certain medications have been identified as possible causes. The general lack of knowledge about the experience, however, is causing some people to resort to unorthodox means of treatment. Others also attribute it to spiritual machinations. Here are some views from parts of Accra.
You are asleep and you feel like waking up, but you can't wake up. You can't even move your body.
It was frustrating. I wanted to get up so badly.
Someone was following me like a monster in a black. Use the word Jesus Christ on the person.
I have the assumption that there's a spiritual presence around and somebody's trying to cover me. And mostly I'm trying to say Jesus, and I'm not even able to utter a word.
To me, I think it's tiredness.
Doctors, however, explain that there's no cause for alarm. With enough rest, one can check the occurrence of sleep paralysis. Dr. Kojo is a sleep specialist at the Brain and Mind Center at Abokobi. He talks about the stages of sleep.
There are two types of sleep. There's a non-rapid eye movement and there's a rapid eye movement sleep. In the rapid eye movement sleep, you have a couple of things that happen. One, dreaming. Two, rapid eye movement. Three, for males, erections. Four, the brain is all over the place, including active dreaming. Five, muscle diaphragm movement. Six, complete paralysis of all the other external muscles. It is part of the rapid eye movement stage of sleep.
Dr. Kojo reassures that sleep paralysis is nothing spiritual.
So it is not that something is causing it. No, that is completely wrong. Just to reassure people, it's a normal state. It happens to everybody. There is no spiritual connotation to it at all.
Though experienced by all age groups, sleep paralysis is common in men. Jesse Sewa Boafo reports for Joy News.
So now you know. Now, an actuarial scientist with the University of Lagos, Nigeria, Professor Joseph Mojoku, has urged African leaders to invest in science and development research. He observed that this is key in bringing Africa at par with the developed countries. He was speaking at a conference in Kumasi.
Professor Mojoku was speaking at the 11th Sustainable Education and Development Research Conference 2022 in Kumasi under the theme, Build Resilient Infrastructure, Promote Inclusive and Sustainable Industrialization and Foster Innovation. Professor Mojoku noted that social unrest has hampered the development of many African countries. He believes the situation has contributed largely to brain drain.
It is observed that Africa is lacking behind in areas of education, research and innovation. Hence, we should shout with one voice to push our various governments to invest massively in education if we should achieve the desired objectives. There is therefore the need for the global south, that is developing countries in general, to invest massively in education, research and social infrastructures, and to formulate guidelines or policies to shape research efforts in all ramifications of human endeavors. if the developing countries and their organizations are to catch up with the advanced countries of the global north.
Speaking on behalf of the Vice Chancellor of KNUST, Provost to the College of Art and Built Environment, Professor John Tiambugri, charged the participants to deliberate on solutions to the continent's challenges.
The litany of challenges and problems have been well known and documented over the years. What is less known and documented is what the innovative solutions to these developmental challenges and problems are, and these should engage your attention as researchers, professionals, and innovators.
The conference showcased several peer-reviewed papers relating to engineering, built environment, hospitality and tourism, oil and gas, and energy, among others. Dr. Emmanuel Bamfuaje is coordinator of the conference.
Africa, we are not doing well apart from the northern part of Africa. And when you zero into Ghana, similar situation, you go to your communities, most of the communities are in rural communities, they don't have more travel road, and that is what this research conference seeks to address, where we are able to come out with 10 papers and some communique so that at least the various agencies can work with the recommendation to improve or achieve the target of the SDGs.
Reporting for Joy News, Kwesi Debra.
My name is Ernest Kojo Manu, Joy News Prime. Still to come, as over 23,000 people test positive for HIV in the first half of 2022, researcher at the University of Ghana develops a formula that will be a major contributor to the development of new anti-HIV drugs.
Look a certain way. And what we can do now is to develop drugs that can specifically stop this processing from happening. And we can stop that, the virus is completely dead.
We'll hear more from him as he urges government and the AIDS Commission to leverage research in the fight against the epidemic. Details after the break. Thanks for staying with us here on Joy News Prime. Now, a researcher at the University of Ghana, Dr. Jerry Jo Harrison, has developed a recipe that will be a major contributor to the fight against the HIV epidemic. The research that birthed the findings look at the molecular structure of HIV polyprotein, a key protein that helps the HIV virus to multiply and propagate. Now, with the molecular structure of this important protein unraveled, Dr. Harrison says the treatment of HIV has been given a major boost. In the following interview, he urges government and the AIDS Commission to leverage on research in the fight against the epidemic. He starts by reacting to the latest report of the AIDS Commission.
So, I mean, that's actually disheartening to know that such large numbers of people are getting infected by the disease. I think that there is some kind of complicity. I think over the years, people have become immune to the idea that HIV still exists. And so despite all the campaign and everything, we are beginning to lose ground, like you rightly mentioned. And so there's a wake-up call to all of us that HIV is still around and that we should take every precaution to prevent further transmission of the disease.
But what do you say about those who attribute, this partly to COVID-19 and its effect on public health, for instance?
Well, I mean, one could certainly not attribute this to COVID. Well, maybe the way COVID struck us unexpectedly and the mortality rates that were observed somewhere elsewhere created the impression that, well, we could be consumed all of a sudden, right. And some way, somehow we managed to survive. And that, gives people some wrong impression that they could be reckless with certain things. But I think that there's a real threat that we have to take very seriously, and we have to go back to the drawing board and start getting innovative ways, especially in this age of social media, to get people, to appreciate the fact that HIV is still there. Yes, there are some treatment that are available, but they come at a cost, and side effects are things that we always talk about. So people should do their best to not get infected in the first place.
And I know you're a researcher, but in your interactions and your engagement with the population, with policymakers, do you find that this is a thing, the nonchalant, is it a thing with the young generation, or it's simply, a thing with the entire population?
I think that it's a general feeling. I don't think it's generational. When I interact with people and you tell them you are HIV, researcher, the first question they ask you is AIDS still there? And so I think that the problem is not a generational one, that we've all become sort of nonchalant about the disease because of the fact that it is not as deadly as it used to be. And so the fear of contracting the disease is no longer as at its peak as it used to be. And I think that's part of the problem that we're having now.
We'll talk about what you think the Ghana AIDS Commission should be doing to address this, but that brings me to your work, the research work that you have done. When I saw the headline, that there's a groundbreaking research on HIV, I thought to myself, oh, do we finally have the cure to HIV? Tell us about it. I read a bit of it, about the polyproteins of the virus and all of that, but you are the researcher. Break it down for me and my viewers.
Okay, so first of all, let me say that we don't have a cure for HIV just yet.
Okay.
I know there are many people who are working day and night trying to crack the puzzle. I mean, there are definitely bottlenecks in that process. Over the years, what we've tried to do is to try to understand the virus so that we can use its own system against it. And one of the things that we still didn't understand is how the virus is able to reproduce itself so well within, the cells. Yeah. And over the years, what we know is that the virus uses very crafty methods by one having a genome that has overlaps in there so that it can maintain a very small size. But one thing that we also observed is that for bigger animals and all that, we make each protein that we need for every process. But these viruses make these proteins as a long block. Then they chop them into smaller pieces in a process we call maturation.
Okay.
This is very unique to viruses, the polyprotein concept. And so the polyprotein presents a unique avenue for targeting the virus, since there are no equivalents within the cells of the eukaryotes that they infect.
Okay.
And for the past 40 years, we really didn't have any grasp of how these polyproteins look like and whether they're even structured in the first place. And so what me and my team have been doing over the past 6-7 years is...
Oh, that's how long it took you to come up with this research?
Oh yes, is going down there and developing new tools and technologies that allowed us to be able to visualize the three-dimensional structure of the enzymes that are used by the virus before they become fully active and ready to go. They come together as a polyprotein, and we wanted to see how they look like. And so that's what the work that was published was about.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying, you're trying to deal with the rapid reproduction or maturation of the virus such that you're able to deal with it at its initial stages so that it doesn't reproduce itself quickly and then get to affect the person infected.
Yes, so we know that the virus has to be inserted into the host genome, and then from there new viruses are made. And the new viruses comprise protein and nucleic acid complexes.
Okay.
And so when the virus is assembled, the virus has to mature. And that maturation involves a protein Caesar that goes about cutting the proteins at specific places in that process.
Okay.
What we've now found is that in the initial stages before this maturation happens, the proteins look a certain way. And what we can do now is to develop drugs that can specifically stop this processing from happening. Okay. And we can stop that, the virus is completely dead. And the optimism is that because the number of proteins in this complex are so small, even if we're able to develop new drugs, we are going to need small doses because there are not many of these available.
Right.
And that means that potential side effects, toxicities are going to be much less. That is going to potentially improve compliance, and things like that. So we are really optimistic that now that we know how these enzymes look like, as somebody say, in their immature stage, then we can target this immature stage of the life cycle and then develop inhibitors that will be able to specifically stop this maturation process, which is required for the virus to be able to infect new cells.
Right. So help us understand how long it takes. I mean, the process from the initial stage to the maturation to the point where it begins to quickly reproduce itself. How long does it take?
Roughly, it takes about 12 to 24 hours. Okay. So when the virus enters the cell, it has to undergo reverse transcription, and then the reverse transcription converts the RNA genome to DNA, and then the integrase enzyme has to take this double-stranded DNA and insert it into the host genome. Then from there, new viruses begin to be produced from there. All from the time that the virus enters the cell to the time when new viruses are seen takes minimum 12 hours. And roughly within 24 hours, you start seeing viruses from the newly infected cells being produced.
That's so quick.
Absolutely.
And so what would that mean for, if at all, we have, pharmacists picking this up to produce some medicines. What would that mean for the treatment? It means that the ability to be able to identify the infection will be crucial.
Yes. So thankfully, as of now, there are really good methods for diagnosing the disease. Unlike some other diseases, it's very easy to diagnose it. But the treatment is where the problem is. The drugs that we currently have target the virus when it has already matured. So the mature enzymes are the ones that the drugs target. And usually once you're mature, you're more resilient. So the possibility of having resistance emerge is much higher when you target the mature enzymes. But because we didn't know how the immature enzymes look like, we haven't been able to target them all as well. And so now that we know, our hope is that we'll be able to now stop the enzyme from maturing and effectively destroy the virus, but also the barrier to genetic resistance is going to be much higher.
Does that mean that any time beyond the 12 hours or say 24 hours maximum, that will be too late?
Not necessarily. I mean, the thing is that, so within 24 hours, the newly infected cell will start producing virus. And so it doesn't really matter. At that point, you already have the viral genome as part of your genome.
Okay.
But how the disease progresses will depend on the interventions that you take from that time.
Yeah.
And we are saying that we believe that now that we know how the immature proteins are, and we understand how their three-dimensional arrangement are, any intervention that is going to be developed for that is going to have potentially minimal side effects.
Right.
And that when the side effects are low, compliance is much higher. And there's even a possibility of having long-acting drugs that one can take only once in a while. Just about a couple of weeks ago, there's been a new drug that's been approved in Europe, lenacapavir, which targets the capsid of the virus. And guess what? That is going to be an injectable once every 6 months. So you can imagine the possibility of
injectable every 6 months for persons who are already infected.
For persons who are already infected, but I believe that in the long term, this will become sort of a pseudo vaccine that people could even take to prevent.
And that was the point I was coming to. I asked the earlier question about the time, given how unregular people check for HIV in our part of the world, especially, and so most likely many people would discover that they are positive when the disease has matured, it's almost advanced, and so then the work that you have done, would you say will become redundant, so that then you can begin to look at the possibility of a vaccine instead of a treatment at that initial stage? So the work doesn't become redundant in the sense that once you get infected, you are infected. And here, the idea is not to prevent the infection. The infection has already happened by the time you are diagnosed.
But how quickly it progresses depends on the intervention that you have. If we can stop the virus from spreading, then we decrease the viral load, and so people can lead healthy lives. But if you even get diagnosed, even at advanced stage, and the drugs are not effective, then you're going to have consequences. So the idea is that we could have a more effective drug that targets a different part of the life cycle compared to the current drug that we have that targets the mature stage of the enzyme. So until we get a vaccine or a cure, this work still remains very relevant.
And the full interview is later here on the Joy News channel. We're taking a break. When we return, we'll bring you showbiz.